The coffee was still warm when Evelyn Moore vanished in the riverside town of Rhinebeck, New York, population 4,912. The mid-September evening of 1959 arrived under a thick fog rolling in from the Hudson Valley, and a chill seeped through the red brick streets. At 6:42 p.m., Evelyn's neighbor, Mrs. Louise Harris, saw the 24-year-old nurse leave the dental clinic where she worked, carrying a small leather purse and a neatly folded white coat over her arm. Evelyn gave a slight nod as she passed the grocery store, saying she just had a few small tasks left before heading home. The older woman watched her figure fade into the thin mist, the clinic lights still glowing behind her. What happened in the next few hours would haunt Rhinebeck for nearly half a century. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. Rhinebeck, New York, fall 1959. The small town on the Hudson River still carried the characteristic post-war calm of the American Northeast. Red brick streets, old-fashioned shops, hand-painted wooden signs, and the steady toll of St. James Church bells every afternoon. The river flowed quietly past rows of historic homes, reflecting the golden lights of late-night diners. The people here were used to order and trusting one another, a place where everyone knew everyone else's face and name. At the town center stood a two-story white-painted building with a small brass sign. Charles Warren, DDS. That was the dental clinic of Dr. Charles Warren, a middle-aged man regarded as the gold standard of professionalism and ethics in the community. He lived alone, was respected by all, and had hired Evelyn Moore as his assistant and anesthesia nurse in 1957. Evelyn, 24, was the only Moore sibling still living in Rhinebeck after her brothers and sisters moved away. She was described as smart, careful, and somewhat reserved, showing up to work on time, going home on time, spending evenings reading or walking in the park near the riverbank. Neighbors rarely saw her at town parties or gatherings. On the afternoon of September 14, 1959, Dr. Warren's clinic was unusually busy because of the upcoming fall festival. Evelyn stayed later than usual to organize medications and clean the supply room. When the last staff member left, she said she'd stay just a few more minutes to finish entries in the drug log. Night fell, and Main Street was left with only a few dim street lamps casting light on the mist-dampened sidewalks. A few passers-by still saw light spilling from the clinic's ground floor, then later saw Evelyn cross the narrow alley to the parking lot, wearing her thin white coat and carrying her small leather purse. She smiled and gave a slight nod to the shopkeeper next door. That was the last time anyone saw her that evening. As night deepened, the Moore house on the north side of town stayed lit, waiting. When the clock struck midnight and Evelyn still hadn't returned, her mother assumed her daughter might be watching the clinic or visiting a coworker. By morning, she climbed the stairs to her daughter's small room and called out a few times. No answer. The bed was untouched, blankets neatly folded, work clothes hanging straight, purse sitting beside the vanity. The previous night's teacup still held half a cup of cold water. She retraced the familiar places, the grocery, the pharmacy, then stopped by the clinic, but the door was locked, curtains drawn. No one answered. She went home, made a few more phone calls. No one knew anything. As morning light fell across Rhinebeck's old stone rooftops, she picked up the rotary phone, dialed the town police, her voice trembling as she managed just one short sentence. My daughter went to work yesterday and hasn't come home. On the other end, the duty officer repeated the information and transferred the call to headquarters. The report was logged in the morning duty book. At the small station on Montgomery Street, Chief Harris O'Malley was brewing coffee when he received the yellow note from the desk officer. Family reports missing daughter, female 24, nurse at Warren Clinic. He skimmed it, then buzzed Frank Ivello, the investigator handling civilian cases. You got a minute, Frank? Come up here, O'Malley said curtly, sounding tired. Ivello, just over 30 and less than a year on the job, arrived with his notebook and fountain pen. O'Malley summarized, a young woman missing after work, mother reported it this morning. Could be, She stayed out overnight, but it could be something else. Go talk to the family, get every detail. Ivello nodded and asked for a photo of the victim if they had one. About 10 minutes later, the two Moores arrived at the station. Mrs. Moore still clutched her small purse, eyes ringed from lack of sleep. Her eldest son accompanied her and placed a photo of Evelyn in her white uniform on the desk. In the picture, she smiled faintly, standing on the porch with red-turning maple leaves behind her. O'Malley asked the basics. Did Evelyn ever go away without notice? Had she met anyone new lately? Any family conflicts? Mrs. Moore answered slowly. No. She worked all day, came home at night, went to church on weekends. She didn't have anyone else besides work. When asked the last time she saw her daughter, she recounted almost minute by minute the previous morning. Evelyn left at 7, wearing her white coat, said she might be late because she had to inventory drugs. That night, when Mrs. Moore went to bed, her daughter's room light was off. In the morning, the bed was smooth, the teacup cold, and the car was gone from the garage. Ivello wrote down every detail, including that she'd worked for Dr. Warren for 2 years, a man Mrs. Moore said. Everyone in town trusted. The chief glanced at Ivello. Start with him. He's the last one who saw her. Ivello nodded and asked about friends and co-workers. Mrs. Moore said Evelyn was close to a nurse named Rosa, otherwise just casual acquaintances. After nearly an hour, the interview ended. O'Malley stood and reassured her. We'll check everything thoroughly, ma'am. Go home and rest. When the door closed, he turned to Ivello. I don't think this is just a girl running off. Go to their house first, check the scene, then head to Warren's clinic. Ivello drove to the red brick house where Evelyn lived with her mother. Inside, the air still carried the scent of cold tea and soap. The bed was neatly made, clothes hung in perfect rows, vanity tidy. On the shelf was a small notebook, a corner page reading, Monday inventory drugs. No signs of forced entry, no disturbance, just a quiet, chilly room frozen mid-moment. Downstairs, he asked a few neighbors. One said they saw Evelyn leave yesterday morning, looking normal. No one saw her return. Back at the station, Ivello reported briefly, no evidence she left voluntarily, no luggage or money taken, and the room showed no struggle. O'Malley listened, stood up and said, then we open an official file. He signed the first report, bold header, missing person. Initial inquiry. Below, Ivello wrote, victim has stable lifestyle, family confirms no history of leaving home. Need to verify employer's statement at clinic. When the paper was stamped September 15, 1959, Evelyn Moore's disappearance officially became a Rhinebeck police investigation. That afternoon, after the file was opened, Frank Ivello returned to the red brick Moore house. He wanted to double-check everything before moving further. Every missing person case starts with the smallest details. The second-floor room was exactly as it had been that morning, sunlight slanting through thin curtains onto fine dust on the vanity. He walked around, noting in his pad, no signs of struggle, windows intact, no pry marks, furniture in place, belongings complete. On the desk, a small notebook sat beside a fountain pen, a neat line on the corner page. Evening shift, inventory drugs. On the floor, her white nurse shoes sat beside the rug, and in the closet hung rows of clean uniforms. The bed was smooth, pillows aligned. No sign anyone had slept there. In the kitchen, the cold teacup and half-eaten plate of cookies still sat on the counter. Proof she left in a hurry, but without chaos or conflict. Everything was unnaturally quiet, making the apartment feel framed in the instant before something interrupted it. Back on the narrow street outside the Moore house, Ivello noticed the empty parking spot by the fence. The family confirmed Evelyn's blue-silver Ford Fairlane had been gone since the evening of September 14th. O'Malley ordered a check on the registration, plates issued in Rhinebeck in 1956. The department sent bulletins to patrol stations south along the highway, asking them to watch for the car. While waiting for responses, Iavello continued questioning the family. Mrs. Moore insisted Evelyn had no boyfriend. She mostly talked to coworkers and sometimes walked by the river on weekends. She was afraid of going far. Always said home was safer, she said, voice breaking. Her brother confirmed his sister had no shady connections, no debts or personal conflicts. Bank records from the local branch showed her account untouched, no withdrawals, no new transactions. The home phone had no strange messages or recordings. Her life seemed to revolve around 3 fixed points: home, clinic, church. For someone like that, sudden disappearance was unlikely to be voluntary. Iavello returned to the station and organized all the data into the first report. Home condition, personal habits, finances, background. He underlined, no evidence of intent to leave. When O'Malley asked, he simply said, she had no reason to vanish. Everything in her life was as neat as that room. The chief thought for a moment, then said, then it's only the workplace left. That's the last place anyone saw her. From personnel records, they confirmed Evelyn finished her shift late afternoon, September 14th. The Warren Clinic staff list included Dr. Charles Warren, 2 assistants, 1 administrative employee, and Evelyn handling anesthesia. The admin said she left at 5:30, nothing unusual. The 2 assistants left around 6. Only Evelyn stayed, saying she had to tidy the drug storage before going home. That detail caught Iavello's attention. He asked to cross-check the clinic's schedule log against witness statements about when the lights went out. The times matched. Clinic lights stayed on late, past 8 p.m. So the last definite place she was is Warren's clinic, Iavello said, closing his notebook and looking out the office window, where sparse foot traffic still moved normally on Main Street. He felt this case wasn't like any missing person report he'd seen. No signs of running away, no clear motive, and the trail stopped dead at one location. The clinic of a doctor the whole town trusted. Leaving the station, he carried the photo Mrs. Moore had given him that morning, tucked in his coat pocket. That night his final daily note had one line, Endpoint Warren Clinic. The next morning, Rhinebeck was still overcast. Fog from the Hudson thick around Main Street. Frank Iavello and Chief O'Malley drove to Dr. Charles Warren's dental clinic. The 2-story white building sat among the Old Town Row, small brass sign reading, Charles Warren, DDS. The front door was locked, curtains drawn, but the sign still listed hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They knocked. A few minutes later, a middle-aged woman unlocked it. Helen Grady, the clinic's administrative employee. She looked flustered seeing police, speaking softly. The doctor hasn't arrived yet, but he should be here soon. O'Malley showed his badge and asked to speak to all staff that day. While waiting, Iavello observed the waiting room, brown leather chairs in perfect rows, magazines neatly stacked, everything clean to the point of coldness. He noticed the wall calendar by the reception desk, September 14 circled in red ink with a small note, Inventory drugs. A few minutes later, Dr. Warren walked in, tall and thin, salt and pepper hair, white coat, calm face. He shook O'Malley's hand, voice steady. I heard about Evelyn this morning. Terrible. She was a very good person. O'Malley explained the visit briefly, then asked, can you tell us the last time you saw Miss Moore? Warren answered immediately, almost rehearsed, around just before 6, yesterday. She said she'd stay a bit to organize the drug storage. I left first. Iavello wrote it down, eyes still watching the man's face. Did she seem tired or worried? No, completely normal. She was healthy, cheerful. Warren added, Evelyn was very responsible. Maybe she went somewhere spontaneously. I'm sure she'll turn up soon. O'Malley asked about the doctor-employee relationship. Warren smiled. She was like a daughter to me. I trusted her completely. When asked if anyone else was in the building last night, he insisted no. After the talk, police interviewed the remaining staff. Helen Grady said she left at 5:30, saw nothing unusual. The 2 dental assistants, Patricia Long and Ruth Keller, said Evelyn often stayed late to log drugs and clean the procedure room. The doctor trusted her more than any of us, Ruth said. He put her in charge of the drug storage last year. When O'Malley asked the last time they saw Evelyn, Patricia recalled she was in the storage room, checking bottles. I said goodbye and left. It was still light out. Ivello requested a full building search. Warren led them through the rooms, reception, procedure rooms, small storage at the end of the hall. Everything was meticulously organized: syringes, vials, gauze in locked metal cabinets. He unlocked one, saying, "Go ahead, officers. I inventoried this morning. Nothing missing." On the shelf were several glass vials labeled pentothal, a common anesthetic. Ivello bent down to note batch numbers and expiration dates. He said nothing, just observed quietly. The second-floor break room was small, with a window overlooking the rear parking lot. Floor clean, trash empty, no scraps or struggle marks. In the cabinet by the sink, a few neatly folded towels, no stains. O'Malley flipped through the clinic's duty log on the table. All yesterday's patients treated before 6 p.m. No entries after that time. Checking the back door, Ivello saw the lock unscratched, hinges intact. Outside, the gravel lot showed old and new tire tracks mixed together, hard to distinguish. He bent down, picked up a small piece of rubber glove, maybe left by staff, and slipped it into an evidence bag. After nearly an hour, the group returned to reception. Warren leaned against the desk, hands clasped, waiting. O'Malley said, "We haven't found anything unusual yet, but we'll need to verify with other staff." Warren nodded. "Of course, I just hope she's safe. Evelyn was good people. I considered her family." As they stepped outside, Ivello paused to look up at the building once more. Early sunlight hit the closed windows. The white walls reflected a cold, clean light that somehow felt suspicious. He opened his notebook and wrote a short line. "Building locked from outside, no struggle signs. Doctor cooperative." But statement too smooth, too consistent. The report submitted that day concluded, "No clear evidence of criminal activity." That line closed the first report involving the Warren Clinic, marking the investigation's first step. A step that seemed routine but opened a murky, hard-to-explain shadow in the story of Evelyn Moore's disappearance. Over the next 2 days, Ivello and 2 other officers were assigned to canvass Main Street around Dr. Warren's clinic. They went door to door, shop to shop, asking anyone who might have seen or heard anything unusual on the evening of September 14th. The small strip was only a few blocks long, most stores family-owned: Harris & Sons Grocery, the bakery, the pharmacy, a tiny coffee shop. Everyone knew each other, so police questions instantly became town gossip. The grocery owner, Mrs. Louise Harris, about 50, said she was closing late because her husband was still picking up stock from Poughkeepsie. "I saw Evelyn walk by just past 8 o'clock, she said. White coat, seemed in a hurry, eyes sunken like she hadn't slept. I almost called out to ask something, but she just gave a small smile and kept going." When asked direction, she was sure Evelyn headed toward the clinic's rear parking lot. Ivello wrote carefully and asked, "Did you see anyone with her?" "No, just her alone. I remember clearly because the street was practically empty." Across the street, Calvin Reed, watch repair shop owner, said when he locked up around 8:30, he heard an engine start behind the buildings. Didn't look, but it was a big engine, mid-size car, Buick or Ford maybe. Didn't think anything of it. Asked if he heard voices or arguing. He shook his head. No, just the car, then silence. Another witness, Patty Ward, waitress at the corner coffee shop, remembered Evelyn came in most mornings, but not on the 14th. "I got off late that night, around 10 to 9. From the second-floor window I saw the clinic lights still on. Thought she must be cleaning up." That matched Ivello's earlier note, clinic lights on past 8, even though Warren claimed he left at 6. Police also visited Mrs. Larkin, who lived next door to the clinic in an old stone house covered in ivy. She said around 8:30 she heard footsteps and a metallic clank, maybe a car door slamming hard, then quiet. I peeked through the curtain. The storage room light in back was still on. A while later it went off. I just figured they were closing late. Iavello asked her to describe the sound again. She said, like someone dropping something heavy on the floor, not loud, but solid. His note underlined, unusual noise, 8:30, 8:45 p.m. They continued to the residential area behind, asking a group of teens who hung out in the lot. One 17-year-old Bill Crawford said that night he and friends were playing guitar near the overpass and heard a car turn out from the clinic access road. Just remember headlights blinding us, probably a dark car, going real slow then speeding up. He didn't see the driver, but confirmed around 9 p.m. When all statements were compiled, O'Malley spread a small street map on his desk and marked witness locations. A timeline emerged. Asterisk 8:05. Evelyn seen by Mrs. Harris walking toward the parking lot. Asterisk 8:30. Mrs. Larkin hears noise in the clinic area. Asterisk 8:45. Storage room light turns off. Asterisk 9 o'clock. Teen witness hears car leave the area. After 9 o'clock, no one saw or heard anything related to her. The whole area was quiet. Shops closed. Only a few houses still lit. No witness reported seeing Evelyn leave the opposite direction or board a bus. The station also checked bus departure records from Rhinebeck that night. No passenger named Moore listed. O'Malley reviewed Dr. Warren's statement, left at 6, then compared it to the witnesses' descriptions of lights on late. He muttered, if he really left at 6, who kept the lights on until nearly 9? Iavello stayed silent. Adding to the end of the report, no witness confirms Evelyn left the clinic area. Disappearance estimated after 8:30 p.m. To be certain, they did one more quick round with nearby workers, hoping someone noticed another detail. But everyone repeated the same pattern. The town was quiet, no shouting or commotion, no ambulance sirens or chaos. A young nurse staying late was normal. Only the next morning, when the missing person news spread, did those scattered memories get pieced together into a chain of uncertain hours. When all witness statements were compiled at the end of the second day, Iavello produced a 7-page report summarizing each person and observation time. The first conclusion read, based on statements from 5 independent witnesses, disappearance estimated between 8:39 p.m. on September 14, 1959. No one confirms seeing Evelyn Moore after that time. Below it, he noted privately in his notebook, 30-minute gap, key to the case. On the third morning since Evelyn was reported missing, Rhinebeck's weather turned colder, thick fog blanketing Main Street. Chief O'Malley and investigator Iavello decided to search the area behind the clinic, where witnesses said they heard an engine start on the night of September 14th. The parking lot sat between 2 old buildings, gravel-covered and sloping gently toward a row of maples. When they arrived, fog still clung to car hoods, and right in the middle sat the blue-silver Ford Fairlane, plates matching the family's information. Doors locked, no signs of forced entry. A thin layer of dust on the roof showed it had been parked there at least 2 days, unmoved. O'Malley nodded for Iavello to begin processing. He logged the time, photographed the car's overall position relative to the clinic's back door and the nearest street lamp. Several officers strung police tape around the area. Curious locals gathered across the street. Opening the door released cold air and the smell of old vinyl. Inside was tidy, front seats folded forward, keys still in the ignition, but off, fuel gauge at half. On the passenger seat lay Evelyn's white coat neatly folded atop a green clinic folder, stamped Charles Warren, DDS. In the glove box was her leather wallet containing ID, employee card, and $14 cash. Her small purse sat behind the driver's seat with lipstick, a mirror, a notebook, and a pocket Bible. No signs of rummaging or theft. Iavello gloved up and checked the trunk, just a tire repair kit and a folded wool blanket. He shone a flashlight for blood, hair, or foreign objects, nothing but a few dust specks and dried leaves on the floor. The entire car was inexplicably clean. A crime scene technician photographed every angle, then lifted prints from the steering wheel, gear shift, door handles, and rearview mirror. Preliminary comparison back at the station a few hours later showed all matched Evelyn's and family members' prints, no unknowns, no scratches, mud, or strange sand on the pedals, proving the car hadn't been driven off-road since the evening of September 14th. Under the driver's seat, Iavello found a small torn scrap, corner ripped from the drug log, delicate slanted handwriting reading only sedation log. He carefully sealed it in an evidence bag, labeled item #12, planning later comparison. While combing the lot, they spotted faint tire tracks leading toward the narrow road down to the woods behind. But the marks were unclear. Dry gravel and wind had erased most traces. O'Malley ordered photos and measurements of the direction the tracks faced. On the map, the parking spot was perfectly hidden behind the building, just over 10 meters from the clinic's back door, out of sight from the street. Back inside the car, Iavello stared at the white coat. He said quietly to O'Malley, "If she was going anywhere, she would have worn it. That night was cold. No way she'd leave it behind." O'Malley stayed silent, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the still-locked clinic back door. An officer mentioned that door was rarely used, only for taking medical waste to the morning pickup truck. Both men looked at each other, thinking the same thing, but lacking evidence to say it aloud. That afternoon, the car was towed to the police impound for sealing. There, technicians continued with UV light and luminescent powder for biological traces. No blood, no bodily fluids, no foreign fibers. Every item inside was cataloged. 01 white coat, 01 leather wallet, 01 green clinic folder, 01 personal purse, 01 torn paper scrap, 01 wool blanket. The conclusion clearly stated, no signs of struggle, crime, or robbery. No evidence victim left voluntarily. That night, while compiling the report, Iavello spread the scene photos across the desk. The Ford Fairlane glowed in the dim light, clean, orderly, as if its owner had simply stepped out somewhere and vanished into thin air. He underlined a line in his notebook, "Car locked, keys inside." No one can explain that. O'Malley read the report, signed it, then said softly, "So she didn't leave in her car. The question is, what did she leave in, and with whom?" That sentence closed the third-day report, along with the bold summary in the official file. No evidence of robbery or voluntary departure. The next morning, once the car report was complete, Chief O'Malley ordered an expanded search of Dr. Warren's clinic. "If her car is still there," he said, "then everything started and ended inside that building." Frank Iavello and 2 crime scene technicians returned to Main Street with a detailed warrant. Warren greeted them at the door, cooperative but visibly uneasy. He confirmed he'd cleaned the clinic that morning and touched nothing from the day before. Iavello asked him to step away from the work area while the team processed. They started in the main hallway, moving through treatment rooms, file storage, then the small supply room at the back, where Evelyn managed drugs and equipment. Narrow window light hit the shiny tile floor, revealing faint scuff marks and a few pale yellow spots near the baseboard. Iavello knelt, swabbed samples, and handed them to the technician. Opening the drug cabinet with Warren's key, they found an empty space on the shelf where 2 small glass vials should have been. Below, in a drawer, was a half-torn sheet still attached to the log pad, header reading sedative record. The last entry cut off midline, only legible as EMM with unclear dosage symbols. On the stainless steel counter, where instrument trays sat, Iavello spotted a broken glass shard, clearly from a large anesthesia syringe. One piece had a frosted rim with a dried white residue inside. He bagged it. Nearby, the wall and floor were clean, except for a faint circular smear showing wipe marks. Under UV, the area glowed faintly. Residual chemical trace. The technician swabbed and logged it. The room carried a faint mix of antiseptic and ether, different from the usual dental office smell. Iavello opened the remaining drug log in the cabinet, flipping pages. Each day was carefully recorded, drug name, amount used, neat handwriting. But right at the September 14th section, a page was torn out. The tier was clean, deliberate by hand. He noted, drug log page torn out. Date matches disappearance. About an hour later, The liquid and stain samples went to the temporary lab at the Poughkeepsie State Police Post. Quick analysis confirmed sodium pentothal, a strong surgical anesthetic. Residue amount proved someone had opened a vial in the supply room recently. When O'Malley read the results, he looked at Warren and asked, "Why was this drug spilled on the floor and you didn't report it?" Warren answered fast, firm. "Could have been Evelyn spilling during inventory. That was her job. I didn't notice." The room was clean the next morning. Iavello wrote the explanation verbatim, eyes never leaving the faint wiped streak on the tile. As the tech team left the scene, Iavello walked the building's perimeter. From the supply room door he could see straight to Evelyn's car in the lot. He measured, supply room to car, 35 feet, direct line of sight. That made him think, if she left via the back door, it would take seconds to reach the car, yet no one saw her, and the car never moved. That afternoon at headquarters, the search report was finalized. Evidence included 01 broken syringe shard, 02 floor stain swabs, 01 torn drug log scrap, 01 room air sample. Preliminary results, sodium pentothal traces, no struggle or forced entry signs. Investigator note, details do not confirm violence, but circumstances and inconsistencies in doctors' statements warrant continued investigation. O'Malley read the report carefully, paused at the conclusion, then said, 1 broken syringe, 1 torn page, 1 smooth explanation, too many coincidences. Iavello simply replied, and all on the exact day she vanished. He closed the file, red penning a new line on the cover, missing person, suspicious circumstances, that replaced the old label, marking the shift from routine missing person case to one with suspicious elements. The next morning, Frank Iavello brought everything collected from the clinic to the office for review. On his desk, he spread the clinic drug log beside copies of purchase invoices provided by Helen Grady, the admin. The log was meticulous, date, drug name, quantity, signature. From August to mid-September, anesthetics were used steadily, varying only by patient volume. But the last intact page, September 13th, read pentothal, 2 vials, stock depleted. The next page, which should have been September 14th, was torn out. The remaining torn corner showed part of lot 218, matching the batch number on last week's invoice. Iavello checked the clinic's retained invoices from Hoffman's Pharmacy on Market Street, every delivery signed for by Warren. The September 10th invoice clearly listed pentothal 4 vials, signed C. Warren. But the clinic log only recorded 2 vials used for patients over the next 3 days. The other 2 were never mentioned. Iavello took copies to Hoffman's Pharmacy, a small shop with polished wood counters and glass shelves of medicines. Pharmacist Arthur Hoffman, over 60, remembered Warren's order well. He opened the transaction ledger, pointing to September 10th. "Doctor, Warren ordered 4 vials. I delivered them myself. He said he needed extras for the following week." Iavello asked, "Remember anyone with him?" "No, just him. Evelyn usually brought the receipt to sign, but not that day." Hoffman pulled another ledger for rush orders. Surprisingly, September 12th showed handwriting, "Dr. Warren, additional 2 vials, pentothal." No receipt signature, just taken. Hoffman explained, "We've known each other years. Sometimes they pick up charge later, settle the bill. Normal. Especially with someone reputable, like Dr. Warren." Iavello thanked him, and photographed both pages. Back at the office, he laid the 3 sources side by side. Clinic log, official invoices, pharmacy records. The numbers didn't match. 8 vials delivered that month, 6 logged as used, 2 vanished from all records. The torn section in the internal log matched Evelyn's disappearance date. When O'Malley walked in, Iavello pointed to the note. If he didn't log it, where did the drugs go? O'Malley stared at the torn paper, silent a moment, then said, "Suppose she really was doing inventory that day and noticed the discrepancy." Iavello nodded. "And if she asked him about it, then..." He didn't finish. That afternoon, they brought Warren in again. He arrived calm, gray coat, neat, carrying a briefcase. Ivello opened the board, pointing to 2 invoices. Records show you ordered 8 vials of pentothal this month. Your log shows 6. Where are the other 2? Warren paused, then answered, could be a bookkeeping error. Evelyn handled the log. I just signed off. But pharmacist Hoffman says, you personally picked up the last 2. I don't recall. Maybe I did, and told her to log it, and she forgot. It happens. O'Malley cut in, a responsible nurse like her forgets to log drugs. Hard to believe, doctor. Warren looked up, eyes cold. What exactly are you implying? O'Malley simply said, we just want clarity. After over an hour, Warren stuck to his story that any shortages were administrative errors. He repeated that the clinic was small, no dedicated accountant. Before leaving, he stressed, I understand you have to do your job, but I hope you don't alarm patients and the community. When the door closed, O'Malley sighed. Ivello neatly stacked papers into a new folder labeled Inventory Discrepancy, Pentothal. That same afternoon, a summary report was finalized for New York State Police. In the assessment section, Ivello wrote, comparison between drug log and pharmacy invoices shows 2 missing pentothal vials with no receipt. Pharmacist confirms Dr. Warren personally took additional drugs outside regular order. No evidence the missing drugs were used legitimately. Employee Evelyn Moore's disappearance occurred the same day as inventory discrepancy. O'Malley signed off, adding a request to escalate to state level for technical pharmaceutical analysis and controlled substance handling review. The fax went out late afternoon, attached copies of invoices and photos of the torn log. When the transmission beeped, Ivello sat back in the darkening office, looking out at quiet Main Street. On the desk, the torn drug log scrap from the supply room sat sealed in plastic, its curled edge like an unfinished piece of evidence. He added 1 line to the investigation journal. 2 missing pentothal vials, vague explanation. Same day as disappearance. 2 days after the drug discrepancy report went to state police, Rhinebeck PD sent a 3rd summons for Dr. Charles Warren to headquarters. He arrived on time, still composed, gray coat and gold-rimmed glasses. But unlike previous visits, his demeanor was more guarded. O'Malley greeted him at the door and led him to the small interview room. On the table sat the thick file Frank Ivello had prepared, copies of invoices, drug log photos, and search reports. O'Malley started gently. We need to clarify a few points from prior statements just to line up the data. You can start with the exact time you left the clinic on the evening of September 14th. Warren sat straight, hands clasped. As I said, I left around 6, after the last patient. Evelyn stayed to finish the drug log. When I left, she was perfectly fine. Ivello opened the old notebook, flipping to the verbatim quote, she said she'd be home soon. He read aloud. Last time you said she wanted to go home early, now it's staying to finish the log. Which is it? Warren hesitated, cleared his throat. I meant, she said she'd finish up and leave right after. I just phrased it differently. Ivello noted it, eyes locked. O'Malley shifted. Did you notice her looking tired lately? Your staff said she was overworked. Warren answered slowly. Evelyn had some mental issues. I didn't want to mention it, but maybe now it's necessary. She got stressed easily, had insomnia, worried for no reason. I advised her to see a psychiatrist in Albany. O'Malley logged it, then asked, any medical records or prescriptions to back that up? Warren shook his head. No, just personal advice. I saw her anxious, sometimes stepping out mid-shift. I thought she was tired. Ivello wrote every word, then continued. Ever notice her taking drugs from storage outside protocol? Warren frowned. I trusted my staff. If anything, maybe she grabbed the wrong vial. But the log is missing 2 pentothal vials you didn't record, and the pharmacist says you took them. I explained, bookkeeping error. So why is the exact September 14th page torn out? Warren looked up, voice dry. Maybe she tore it, I don't know. Ivello clearly saw the tension in his gestures, clenched fists, eyes darting to the window, voice hardening. When O'Malley asked him to recount the entire evening again, Warren gave a shorter, less detailed version. First he said he left at 6, then closer to 7. When asked about Evelyn's car, he acted surprised. Her car is still there? I didn't notice. She usually walked a few blocks, then I'd see the car gone. Ivelo wrote, departure time contradiction. 6:00700. No memory of car location. After nearly an hour, the interview paused while a technician brought coffee. O'Malley kept the mood casual, asking about family, dental school. Warren answered steadily, but avoided eye contact. When Ivelo mentioned chemical residue found in the supply room, Warren reacted fast. I told you, drugs spilled on the floor. You can't imagine how messy a dental office gets. His voice suddenly rose, then dropped as he regained composure. When the interview ended, Ivelo requested to keep the original drug log and asked Warren to sign the photocopy acknowledgement. He hesitated briefly, then agreed, signing curtly in the corner. As he left, he turned back quietly. I really hope you find her soon. Everything is being misunderstood. The door closed, leaving a faint antiseptic smell in the air. Ivelo looked at O'Malley. He's building a wall. The more we ask, the more defensive he gets. O'Malley nodded, pulling out a cigarette, but not lighting it. Innocent people usually want to talk more than that. They sat in silence a moment. Then Ivelo restacked the files. Final note. Statements contradict prior interviews. Introduces victim mental issues to deflect. Evasive, visibly tense. By day's end, the file was updated with a new interview transcript. O'Malley's comment read, no direct evidence for charges. Case remains open investigation. The report was clipped into the ever-thicker folder, along with growing question marks around the name Dr. Charles Warren, the only person confirmed to have been with Evelyn Moore the evening she vanished. After the third Warren interview yielded no concrete results, Chief O'Malley decided to expand the search beyond downtown Rhinebeck. If she's no longer in town, he said at the morning briefing, we need to see if someone took her out. A search party was formed, 12 officers, 4 volunteer firefighters, and a group of locals. The Hudson River ran along Rhinebeck's western edge. Deep water and muddy banks, marked as the first priority zone. Boat teams started from the Old South Dock, fanning out both directions. On shore, volunteers walked in lines, scanning every meter, planting flags at suspicious spots. In the first 2 days, they found only drifting trash and old tire tracks near the forest entrance by the river. By the 4th day, a young officer reported finding a cream-colored women's glove, caked with mud, caught in the grass along the riverbank. The glove was made of thin leather, small in size, the style common among young women of that era. Ivelo arrived at the scene, slipped on rubber gloves, and carefully sealed the evidence in a plastic bag. No blood, no tears, just slightly faded. Not far away, another volunteer discovered a linen handkerchief with the initial E embroidered in green thread along the edge. Both items were sent to the lab in Poughkeepsie for analysis. While awaiting results, O'Malley ordered the search area expanded northward to the small woods bordering Route 9G, known locally as Maple Woods. Tracking dogs from Albany were brought in, given Evelyn's coat from her car to follow the scent. The pack circled the parking lot behind the clinic, looped around the narrow path leading to the woods, then stopped at a muddy embankment, barked a few times, and lost the trail. Footprints in the mud were indistinct. Only a long drag mark mixed with old tire tracks remained. Technicians photographed and measured, but could not determine the direction of movement. The weather worsened over the following week. Steady rain made river searches difficult. The Hudson ran fast, murky and cold. Rescue teams dragged grappling hooks around the dock area, dropped nets into deep pools, but pulled up only branches and household trash. No clothing, no body, no other belongings of Evelyn's. In Maple Woods, rain turned the ground slick, rescue vehicles got stuck, and sweeps had to be halted repeatedly. 3 weeks passed, and townspeople began to talk. The local paper ran a short piece on page 2. Young nurse missing, police expand search. When the lab report on the glove and handkerchief came back, that faint hope quickly died. The analysis showed no blood or identifiable DNA, but both items contained traces of a volatile chemical, ether, a solvent commonly used in preparing anesthesia. The amount detected was very low, source untraceable. Avello read the report and only slightly furrowed his brow. He knew ether was routinely used in clinics, and the evidence might simply reflect the girl's work environment rather than proof of a crime. Still, the coincidence was impossible to ignore. O'Malley had a full map drawn of the river and woods, marking the locations where the items were found. The two spots were just over half a mile apart, along the dirt road that ran from the clinic down to the riverbank. If she left the building, she might have taken this route, he said. But the question remained, why was the car untouched, keys in the ignition, yet its owner nowhere to be found? In the days that followed, the search pushed eastward into the meadows. They raked and shoveled, turning over layers of rotting leaves, checking old pits. Every scoop yielded only clay and roots. News coverage faded, townspeople returned to their routines. Evelyn's mother still came to the station every morning, bringing coffee for Avello, and asking, "Anything new, Uncle?" He could only shake his head. By the end of the third week, the search was officially scaled back. Volunteers were dismissed. Only a small team continued patrolling the river, no new discoveries. All evidence led nowhere. That evening, in the chilly office, Avello finished the final search phase report. The 10-page document listed every area covered, items collected, and lab results. The conclusion was typed. O'Malley read it, nodded slowly, and signed. The last line read clearly, "Victim or evidence of crime not located. Case remains open." As everyone left the office, Avello stayed behind, staring at the photo of Evelyn on his desk, the one Mrs. Moore had given him on the first morning of the investigation. The smile in the picture remained gentle and calm, in stark contrast to the invisible void now enveloping the town. In his personal notebook, he wrote a short line, then closed it carefully. 3 weeks, no trace. If she's out there, the Hudson will tell us, but today, it stays silent. When the official search ended without results, pressure from Evelyn's family and town opinion began mounting on the police department. Her mother came daily, carrying questions O'Malley no longer knew how to answer. In internal meetings, Avello persistently emphasized, every trace leads back to the clinic and to that man. After nearly a week of debate, the district attorney finally approved a search warrant for Dr. Charles Warren's private residence, a rare decision at a time when his social standing was still considered beyond reproach. Warren's house sat on the southern edge of Rhinebeck, about 2 miles from downtown, on nearly an acre of land with a white fence and a front yard full of daffodils. Police arrived early on a foggy October morning. Warren stood at the door in a gray sweater, expression calm but eyes betraying irritation. "I've cooperated as much as possible," he said, "but if you insist on searching my home, make it quick." O'Malley handed over the warrant signed by the district attorney, voice even, "We just need to verify a few details. We'll try to leave everything undisturbed." The search proceeded by the book. 2 officers stayed to film. Avello and the forensic technician moved room by room. The house was impeccably tidy, almost sterile, polished hardwood floors, bookshelves perfectly aligned, belongings neatly arranged. On the living room desk, medical journals and conference reports were bundled with string, nothing out of place. The kitchen medicine cabinet held a few antibiotics, mild sedatives, and a nearly full bottle of bourbon. Everything radiated absolute control, as if the owner never allowed anything to stray from its place. When Avello went down to the basement, he immediately noticed something off. Compared to the rest of the house, the basement felt raw and cold, still smelling of fresh cement. A section of the concrete floor was lighter in color, newer than the surrounding area, about 2 square meters. He knelt and tapped lightly. The echo sounded hollower than the older sections. Along the wall stood a metal rack holding old wooden crates of medical supplies, syringes, glass vials, gauze, and a few broken lamps. Many items were dusty but lined up precisely. No sign of disarray. Iavello photographed, marked the location of the new concrete, and noted, basement floor recently poured, surface still glossy. When O'Malley came down, he asked at once, "How long ago did you redo the basement?" Warren answered quickly, 3 weeks ago. I repoured the floor because the old one was cracked and moldy. Nothing to do with the case. Iavello pressed, 3 weeks ago, meaning early September. Yes, right after Labor Day weekend. The response was recorded without further comment. When the technician probed with a metal rod, the sound against the new floor rang differently, but not enough for a warrant to drill. Under state law, excavating or breaking private property required confirmed evidence of crime or death. Beyond the new concrete, nothing else stood out. The upstairs bedroom was spotless, sheets smooth, closet orderly. In the nightstand drawer, they found a few old photographs. Warren with colleagues at a dental conference in Albany, another with clinic staff. Evelyn, standing at the edge, gaze distant but face clear. Iavello kept copies for the file. As the team prepared to leave, Warren stood at the foot of the stairs, voice hoarse. "I hope you understand, I've lived my whole life in this town and never done anything wrong. You're destroying my reputation on mere suspicion." O'Malley replied calmly, "We're just doing our duty, doctor. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." He signed the inventory, confirming only the photocopies and basement floor notes were taken. That afternoon, back at the station, Iavello completed the report. Search of Dr. Charles Warren's private residence. Basement contains newly poured concrete section, approx. 2x 2 meters, material and color distinct from older floor. No direct evidence or signs of crime found. Old medical equipment stored neatly. Under current law, insufficient grounds for excavation without proof of death. O'Malley signed off and filed it in the Evelyn Moore missing person case. That night, after everyone left, Iavello stayed to review the basement photos. The camera flash reflected off the concrete, creating cold white patches like a fresh scar across the otherwise perfect house. He closed the folder and wrote a short line in his personal notebook. "New basement pour. Cannot excavate. But concrete, once set, can still talk. Just not yet." 3 months had passed since Evelyn Moore vanished. Autumn in Rhinebeck had given way to cold days. Maple leaves carpeted the streets, and news of the case faded from local papers. In the police station, the case file sat on Frank Iavello's desk, thickened by dozens of reports, photos, and statements, yet no evidence strong enough to move the investigation forward. Final lab results from Poughkeepsie arrived in early December, confirming no biological traces on any items. Analysis of chemical residue from the storage room concluded only anesthetic sodium pentothal, legitimate dental use. No direct proof of wrongdoing, no body, no new witnesses. O'Malley read the summary, set it down quietly, knowing they had exhausted everything the law allowed at the time. On December 12, 1959, the final internal meeting was held at the Rhinebeck station. O'Malley chaired, the district attorney's representative, and 2 investigators attended. Iavello presented his reports in order: clinic search, riverbank sweeps, Warren residence search, and evidence inventory. When he reached the new concrete section in the basement, the prosecutor raised a hand. "No grounds for excavation without proof of death. He's a doctor, high social standing. We can't tear up a citizen's house on suspicion alone." O'Malley stayed silent, nodded, and closed the meeting. The room fell heavy. Everyone understood the case had hit the limit of legal process, and would likely stay there. That afternoon, the clerk officially stamped inactive on the case jacket. The red stamp stood bold, dated December 15, 1959. All evidence: the broken syringe fragment, torn drug log page, glove, handkerchief, soil samples from the storage room, was sealed in a wooden box labeled Case Hash 59 He 216 Evelyn Moore, and transferred to the Dutchess County Sheriff's Department evidence vault. The transfer log listed every item in detail, signed by Iavello and the vault officer. It was placed on shelf 3, row B, northeast corner, among hundreds of unsolved minor cases in the county. That evening, as the office emptied, Iavello sat reorganizing copies for his personal files. He opened his notebook, flipped through pencil notes. Sodium pentothal, 2 vials missing. Drug log torn. New basement concrete. At the bottom he added a new line. No crime confirmed, but connection to medical practice not ruled out. The small, neat words were circled, then the notebook closed. Outside, the season's first snow began falling on the station roof. The weak yellow light shone on the faded sign. O'Malley stepped out of his office, paused at Iavello's desk. "You did everything you could, Frank. Sometimes cases just don't get answers." Iavello looked up, nodded, but something still gnawed at him. "I know, but the way everything fits together, it's not natural." O'Malley sighed, put on his coat, and left into the whistling hallway wind. When the door shut, Iavello glanced at the small photo of Evelyn taped to the corner of the file cabinet. She wore her white uniform, smiling beside the clinic door. He switched off the light, leaving only the desk lamp glowing on the brown folder now stamped inactive. 10 miles away in the vault, the evidence box had just been shelved, already gathering its first thin layer of dust. No one in the room that night knew those scraps of paper, glass files, and faint traces would lie silent in the dark for years. A missing person case closed without resolution, left only with the dry stamp of procedure, victim not located, no evidence of crime, file inactive. After the Evelyn Moore file was closed at the end of 1959, life in Rhinebeck quickly returned to normal. Smaller incidents, town changes, and time itself layered thick dust over a disappearance only a handful still remembered. In 1960, the Rhinebeck department saw turnover. Chief O'Malley retired, replaced by a younger man. Frank Iavello moved to commercial fraud investigations, rarely mentioning case 59H216 again, though he kept copies of his notes in a private drawer. Each year, when the unsolved list was reviewed, Evelyn Moore's name remained among hundreds of dry entries. Missing person, no recovery. No one requested reopening. No one objected. It simply existed, like a number stripped of meaning. In the early 1960s, Rhinebeck expanded. Old buildings were demolished for new ones. Dr. Warren's clinic continued operating normally, later becoming affiliated with a dental practice in Kingston. Rumors about the disappearance surfaced a few times when the Moore family moved away in 1963, then died down. Evelyn's mother relocated to relatives in New Paltz, health failing, never stopping believing her daughter would return. Occasionally she wrote the police for updates and always received the same reply. No new developments. Through the 1970s, investigative technology evolved, fingerprinting, chemical analysis, photo databases, but the Evelyn file stayed in the Dutchess County Vault. That brick warehouse, built during World War I, held thousands of evidence boxes stacked to the ceiling, filed by case number rather than date. On shelf 3, row B, northeast corner, the wooden box labeled case #59H216 sat undisturbed, seal intact. Few remembered it, except occasional vault staff who skimmed the index and wondered why a missing person case kept evidence so long. Dr. Charles Warren continued practicing through the 1960s and 1970s, becoming a familiar face at regional medical conferences. He received praise for contributions to New York dentistry and spoke in Albany in 1974. No one connected him to the young nurse's disappearance nearly 20 years earlier. Both Rhinebeck and Poughkeepsie had new generations who neither knew nor cared about old stories. The original clinic was sold in 1981 to a young doctor. In 1988, the local paper ran a small notice on page 4. Dr. Charles Warren, 73, killed in Taconic Parkway crash. Police said he lost control returning from Albany. The car veered off the road and burst into flames. No foul play suspected. The funeral was quiet, attended by a few colleagues and former students. With his death, the Evelyn Moore case seemed finally buried too. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, File 59H216, was moved several times as state police reorganized storage. Each transfer, staff counted items only. No one opened the box. In the 2004 update of the New York State Cold Case Registry, the case was officially marked unresolved. Missing person presumed deceased. No objections, no further demands. Rhinebeck entered the new century transformed. Main Street restored, tourists arriving, cafes and antique shops sprouting. The few remaining old-timers occasionally mentioned Evelyn when passing the white building that had been Warren's clinic, now a pottery store. A nurse used to work here, then vanished, they'd say. Tone casual as folklore. No one recalled the exact year, only that it was a long time ago. Frank Iavello retired in 1985 and moved to Poughkeepsie with his wife. He still scanned rare articles about unsolved state cases. Whenever he saw a cold case, he thought of Evelyn Moore. He once wrote to an old colleague, "I never believed she left willingly. We missed something, but time has locked every door." From 1960 to 2006, nearly half a century passed. Every trace of Evelyn Moore lay buried under layers of newer files. Only a few state records, a yellowed newspaper clipping, and a handful of memories remained of a disappearance that lingered as a quiet town mystery along the Hudson. By late 2006, when the New York Department of Justice compiled all unsolved 1950s cases, Evelyn Moore's name appeared on the official state list. Code 59H216. Cold case. Missing person. A case silent for nearly 50 years, closed in the ledger without evidence or resolution, leaving only time as the final witness. February 2007, Rhinebeck was no longer the quiet town it had been nearly half a century earlier. The white-painted clinic, once run by Dr. Charles Warren, had long vanished, replaced by a small commercial building under reconstruction, a coffee shop and service office. That morning, as the crew from Hudson Valley Construction was digging the foundation behind the old structure, one of them, excavator operator Paul Vickers, felt the bucket strike something hard that rang out with an unusual metallic clang. At first he thought it was an old pipe, but as the dirt was cleared away, the object revealed a square, rusted shape, a metal box about the size of two hands, buried more than half a meter deep. Per regulations, they halted work and notified the site manager. The manager, a former reserve police officer, suspected it might be medical material or old waste from the clinic, so he called the Rhinebeck Police Department. When two officers arrived at the scene, they noted the box's location was almost exactly where the old 1950 blueprints showed the drug storage room had been. In the weak morning sunlight, the box was carefully lifted from the soil. Thick rust made it impossible to open on site. The officers sealed it and transported it to the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office Forensic Lab for supervised opening. That same afternoon, in the lab, a technician used specialized tools to cut through the rusted lid. When it opened, the smell of old metal and dampness wafted out, along with a folded yellowed sheet of paper lying on top. Beneath it were two intact glass syringes, a discolored Kodak 35mm film canister, and a small scrap of paper, handwritten in green ink, EM 9/14. All three items were placed in separate evidence bags, photographed, and sequentially numbered. No one in the room spoke, but everyone understood the initial significance of those initials. They matched the date Evelyn Moore was recorded as missing. Word of the discovery quickly reached the records division. An archivist pulled the old files, looked up case number 59H216, and confirmed it was the 1959 missing person case of a young nurse who had worked at that very clinic. The original file was retrieved from Dutchess County storage, its wooden cover thick with dust and stamped inactive 1959. When the current sheriff reviewed the contents, he immediately contacted the New York State Cold Case Unit for a full re-evaluation. The reactivation order was signed that same day. A special four-person team from Albany was dispatched, led by Inspector Marie Delaney, who specialized in unsolved cases from the 1950s through 1970s. She received the metal box along with the entire original file, including Frank Avello's notes and the 1959 sealed evidence. While reviewing the old reports, Delaney remarked, "All the original evidence is still intact, unopened for nearly 50 years. That's extremely rare." The state lab was tasked with preserving the Kodak film, as old nitrate stock was both flammable and fragile. A photo restoration specialist used stabilizing solution and digital scanning equipment to extract the images. After 3 days, they recovered 10 faint but identifiable frames, a young woman lying in a dental chair, face in profile, eyes closed, overhead light shining down. In the corner of the frame, a man's hand appeared, holding a syringe. When the prints were made, the entire team gathered around the table and stared for a long time. Though the woman's face was slightly blurred, comparison with Evelyn Moore's 1958 personnel photo left almost no doubt. The label, EM 9/14, was confirmed to be written with a fountain pen, common in the 1950s, using ink-matching samples from the clinic's old drug log. The examiner's preliminary conclusion: evidence dates consistently with the time frame of the incident. High probability of direct connection to the victim. On March 16, 2007, the Cold Case Unit officially took custody of the entire file from Dutchess County. The opening entry read, "Reactivation of Case #59-216. Subject: Evelyn Moore, missing person, 1959. Discovery of new evidence warrants full review. The metal box, 2 syringes, film canister, and the EM 9/14 note were numbered, evidence 1 through 4. All original 1959 evidence. Broken syringe fragments, drug log, gloves, and handkerchief was also transferred to the state lab for comparison. As the new evidence list was entered into the system, Evelyn Moore's name reappeared in the state database for the first time in nearly half a century. The development drew attention not only in Rhinebeck, but from local media as well. Police, however, kept details quiet, confirming to the press only that evidence related to a historic missing person case had been found. That night, in the small Cold Case Unit office in Albany, Marie Delaney placed the rusted metal box on her desk beside the brown folder labeled Inactive 1959. She opened the first page, the original report signed by Frank Avello 48 years earlier. The bold black typewriter text was still clear: missing person, Evelyn Moore. At the bottom, Avello's faded handwritten note remained. Possibility of connection to medical practice not ruled out. Delaney stared at the line for a long time, then said softly, "We start again from here." With the chance discovery by a construction worker, a disappearance thought buried since 1959 suddenly flared back to life. Rhinebeck, after nearly 50 years of silence, was about to face once more the name the town had tried to forget: Evelyn Moore. Within 2 weeks of the Cold Case Unit formally taking the case, all new and old evidence was transferred to the New York State Forensic Investigation Center in Albany. The facility was far more advanced than any lab available in 1959, equipped with molecular scanning, DNA analysis, and digital image reconstruction. For the investigators, every item pulled from the rusted metal box was a potential key to unlocking a case forgotten for nearly half a century. Forensic biochemist Dr. Andrea Levin was the first to process the 2 glass syringes found inside the box. Under the microscope, she discovered faint yellowish residue still clinging to the inner walls and needle tips. Using extraction solvent, she recovered a tiny strand lodged in the plunger seal, a light brown hair approximately 3 centimeters long. The sample was immediately sent to the DNA unit for comparison. Simultaneously, technicians isolated the crystallized chemical from the glass surface and ran mass spectrometry. Results revealed 2 primary compounds: sodium pentothal and ketamine. But in raw pre-commercial form, likely experimental batches from the late 1950s when ketamine was still under research. The presence of both substances in a single syringe was deemed highly irregular, as no medical protocol called for such a combination. Levin's preliminary report stated, sample contains research-grade mixture of pentothal and ketamine at high concentration. No evidence of dilution to medical standards. While awaiting DNA results, another team focused on the Kodak film. After scanning and chemical stabilization, the 10 frames were restored with greater clarity. The images depicted the distinctive interior of a dental office, bright tiled walls, instrument table, overhead lamp, and patient chair. On the chair lay a young woman on her side, brown hair, wearing a white blouse, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, arms limp. A syringe was inserted into the vein of her left arm, tourniquet, wrapped around the wrist. In the 5th frame, a man's shoulder and arm appeared, long-sleeved shirt, gleaming metal wristwatch. By the 8th frame, the man was more visible, face in profile, strong overhead light, revealing deep lines around the mouth. The image matched perfectly with archival photos of Dr. Charles Warren from that era. When enlarged, technicians noticed faint fingerprints along the film edge, clear enough to lift. The digital identification unit isolated the prints and ran them through the state database. Records contained Warren's prints from his 1947 licensing file. The prints on the film did not match. This was surprising, given the man in the photos was unmistakably Warren. After 3 days of checks, the final result matched Harold Warren Jr., the doctor's son, who had worked informally as an assistant at the clinic in the late 1950s. Harold Jr.'s prints were on file from a brief stint in the military reserves. The perfect match made the team pause in front of the screen for a long time. They noted, fingerprints on film belong to Harold Warren Jr., not Charles Warren. At the same time, DNA results from the hair were released. The Albany Biology Analysis Center confirmed female DNA with a chromosome profile consistent with the Moore family. When compared to a living niece of Evelyn, the match was 99.74%, the report concluded. Hair recovered from syringe corresponds to an individual of the Moore lineage. Probability of random match below 0.01%. With this data, the cold case unit officially confirmed one of the syringes had been in direct contact with victim Evelyn Moore. The investigators held an urgent meeting in the 3rd week. Marie Delaney summarized, 2 powerful anesthetics, Moore family DNA, photos showing Evelyn in the dental chair, and Harold Warren Jr.'s fingerprints, all inside a box buried beneath the clinic floor. This cannot be coincidence. Another officer asked, "Do we know when the film was shot?" Delaney replied, "Late 1950s, based on materials and Kodak batch, dates align perfectly with the 1959 disappearance." She ordered further analysis of the EM-914's note. Graphic experts compared the handwriting to Charles Warren's signatures in old licensing files. Results showed identical slant, pressure, and letter connections, virtually certain to be the same writer. That short line became the first direct link, tying Warren to the buried evidence. When the consolidated report was complete, the cold case unit produced a detailed inventory. 1. Evidence #1, glass syringe containing pentothal ketamine mixture, female DNA matching Moore lineage. 2. Evidence #2, second syringe, no DNA, same type and chemical mixture. 3. Evidence #3, Kodak, 35 mm film canister, 10 frames, images of victim Evelyn Moore and Dr. Charles Warren. Harold Warren Jr. fingerprints on film edge. 4. Evidence #4. Note reading EM-914's handwriting matches Dr. Warren. Each entry was uploaded to the state's new electronic system, officially changing case 59H216 to active review status for the first time. Delaney forwarded the summary to the Dutchess County District Attorney with a brief note, "New physical evidence confirms victim was administered anesthetic mixture at Warren Clinic, highly likely on the day of disappearance. Possible involvement of doctor's family member. Recommend re-interview of witnesses and Warren family history." That evening, with the office empty, Delaney sat alone studying the enlarged 8th frame. Evelyn's face in profile, eyes closed, overhead light glaring down on her forehead. Beside her, the shadowed figure of a man leaning in, half his face lost in the harsh light. She set the photo down and reopened the original file. There it was again, Frank Iavello's 1959 typewriter entry, missing person, suspicious circumstances. After 48 years, those circumstances finally had images, names, and concrete evidence. Immediately after the forensic reports were released, the Cold Case Unit launched a supplemental investigation phase to re-examine every detail in the 1959 file. Inspector Marie Delaney believed that if the old statements aligned with the new evidence, the case could be classified as death during medical procedure, a critical legal basis for reopening prosecution. To prove it, they needed the person who knew the original investigation best. The name mentioned most in the old files was Frank Iavello, the original lead detective. Now retired for over 20 years, and in his 80s, he lived in Poughkeepsie with his wife. On April 2, 2007, Delaney and a junior officer visited Iavello at his small home. On the living room table sat neatly organized folders, still kept in a wooden cabinet, arranged by year. When told the Evelyn Moore case had been reopened, Iavello was silent for a long moment, then walked over and retrieved a separate yellowed box. "I kept copies," he said. "In my heart, I never considered it closed." They sat together reviewing every old report, black and white photos, and his own notes. Drug log page torn, 2 vials of pentothal missing. When Delaney showed him the restored film images, Iavello stared for a long time and nodded slowly. "That's the back storage room. I remember those tiles. No mistake." After the visit, the Cold Case Unit invited him to serve as a voluntary consultant. In meetings, Iavello helped the team re-examine all 1959 witness statements, focusing on 2 individuals, Rosa Delgado, the assistant nurse who had worked with Evelyn, and Earl Jennings, the gardener, who maintained the clinic grounds. They were among the few surviving witnesses still living in the Hudson Valley area. In early April, the team interviewed Rosa Delgado, now nearly 80, at the Florida nursing home where she resided in Gainesville. When shown an old photo of the Warren Clinic, Rosa took a moment to remember, then spoke slowly, in English tinged with Spanish. "That night, I left around 6:30. The doctor told me to go home early, said there were no more patients. But when I was getting my coat, I saw Evelyn still there, carrying a tray into the storage room. She said it would only take a few minutes." When asked if she saw Warren leave the building, Rosa answered firmly, "No." As I walked down the hall, the light in his office was still on. I heard low voices, maybe him and her, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Then the door closed. Delaney pressed, "Did you return the next day?" "No." The next morning, he called and told me to take a week off, because he was rearranging the schedule. It seemed strange, but I didn't dare ask. Rosa's recorded statement was sent back to Albany. When cross-referenced with the times reported by neighbors who saw lights on, the timeline matched the 1959 report exactly. Crucially, Warren's request that she take leave immediately after that night aligned with Evelyn's disappearance. Next, the team located Earl Jennings, the former clinic gardener for 2 years, now 82 and living in Ulster County. The thin old man still had a sharp memory. Looking at the old clinic photo, he said, "I remember that night, there was light rain. I went out back to get a shovel and saw a dim light from the storage room window. Dr. Warren was inside, not wearing his coat. I thought he was working late." Delaney asked, "Did you see anyone else?" "Not clearly, but I heard something metal drop, then saw him pull the curtain shut. A little later he came out the back door, carrying a large leather bag, the kind he used for dental tools. He walked toward the parking area, and I didn't see anything after that." Jennings confirmed the time was around 9 o'clock. When his recorded statement was cross-checked, the team found perfect alignment with the film evidence, shots taken between 8 and 9 p.m. Artificial light, exact storage room setting. Warren's presence there after claiming to have left at 6 p.m. was a clear contradiction. After 2 weeks of interviews, the Cold Case Unit compiled all findings. The timeline was reconstructed. Evelyn stayed to inventory drugs after 6. Rosa left at 6:30 while Warren's office light remained on, Between 8 and 9, both Warren and Evelyn were in the storage room, confirmed by film. Around 9, Gardner Jennings saw Warren leave with a bag. Afterward, Evelyn was never seen again. When combined with the syringe and DNA results, the full scenario emerged. The victim was present in the clinic, injected with a pentothal-ketamine mixture, and never left. The preliminary report was completed at the end of April 2007, signed by Inspector Delaney and consultant Frank Iavello. The conclusion read, "Witness statements and new physical evidence are consistent, indicating high probability victim died during anesthetic injection at Charles Warren's clinic on the night of September 14, 1959. Act occurred within scope of medical practice, involving professional error or non-standard drug use." The report was forwarded to the Dutchess County District Attorney with a request for expanded investigation. As Delaney signed, she paused at the bottom of the page where the 1959 note case, temporarily unresolved, had been replaced by a new terse but weighty line. Probable death during anesthetic injection, verification ongoing. Once the preliminary report on possible death during medical procedure was submitted to the DA, the cold case unit moved to the next phase, verifying the role of Harold Warren Jr., whose fingerprints appeared on the Kodak film. Background records showed he was born in 1937, making him about 22 at the time of the 1959 disappearance. Harold had been a pre-med student at Bard College and occasionally assisted his father at the clinic in the evenings, especially with anesthesia. After Charles Warren died in 1988, Harold Jr. left Rhinebeck, moved to the Syracuse suburbs, and worked for a medical supply company until retirement. In 2007, he was 70, living alone in a small wooden house near the Onondaga Forest edge. On May 5, Inspector Marie Delaney and the local DA obtained an emergency search warrant based on the fingerprint match and the likelihood Harold was present at the clinic the night of the disappearance. The next morning, 2 cold case unit vehicles pulled up to the weathered house where the wooden fence leaned and grass grew high over the steps. When they knocked, Harold opened the door, tall, thin, silver hair, eyes still sharp. He showed no surprise, only asking briefly, "This is about my father, isn't it?" Delaney presented the warrant, voice calm. "We need to review some old documents that may relate to the Rhinebeck Clinic in 1959. Harold stepped silently aside and let them in. The house was dusty but orderly. On the wall hung several old family photos of the Warrens. In one, Evelyn Moore stood with the staff, her smile faint beneath the glass. When Delaney's gaze lingered there, Harold simply said, "She used to work at my father's clinic. I remember." The search lasted nearly 3 hours. They went through the ground floor, the back shed, then the attic, where dozens of boxes held old paperwork, notebooks, and vintage dental equipment. Inside a locked wooden trunk, a technician found a black-covered ledger, pages yellowed, corners thick with dust. The first page was dated 1958. Below were short notes, mostly schedules, orders, and scattered study remarks. But midway through, a folded page with smudged ink revealed shaky fountain pen writing in green. "Father panicked. We hid her." Below only the letter E, stood alone, then crossed out. The remaining pages were blank. Delaney stared at the words, then asked softly, "Can you explain this?" Harold Jr. went pale, sat down and clasped his hands. "I don't remember clearly. I wrote a lot of things when I was young. It might have been something else." "What else could make you write 'We hid her' and sign it with an E?" Harold lowered his head. "I don't know. My memory isn't good anymore." His voice was calm, but his eyes flickered. The ledger was seized as evidence and sent for handwriting analysis. The report confirmed the ink and paper were consistent with 1959, the same type Charles Warren used in his professional log. The paper contained cellulose fibers mixed with zinc powder, unique to batches from Hudson Paper Mill at that time. Ink analysis showed aniline-based blue-green compound common in late 1950s Parker fountain pens. Handwriting experts compared it to Harold's signatures from Bard College admission files and concluded, match on 16 morphological characteristics, 98.6% probability same writer. When the results were presented, the cold case unit immediately requested to question Harold Jr. as a key witness. He agreed and arrived at the local police headquarters with his attorney. During the session, Delaney opened the ledger and pointed to the line, "What was your father panicked about?" Harold sighed and looked out the window. "My father was a strict man. If something really happened, he would never admit fault. I only remember one night when he called me to help carry some supply crates out back. I didn't ask. Was that the night of September 14, 1959? I don't remember. Maybe." Delaney continued, "Did you ever bury any items or a metal box on the clinic property?" Harold looked at her for a moment, then shook his head. "I never buried anything, but my father once asked me to help move an old toolbox down to the basement, saying it contained expired drugs. I did it, then left. The next day, he told me never to mention it again." He paused, voice low. "If you believe that nurse died because of a mistake, maybe my father couldn't bear it." Delaney showed no reaction, only nodded and took detailed notes. The interview ended after 2 hours with no confession, but also no denial. In her report, she wrote, "Subject cooperative, but evasive, confirmed his father panicked on the night of the incident." 1959 diary entry likely reflects concealment or cover-up of a medical accident. On May 20, 2007, the Dutchess County DA signed an official order designating Harold Warren Jr. a suspect for aiding in the concealment of evidence in the Evelyn Moore disappearance. The black-covered ledger was numbered evidence #15 and sealed alongside the metal box recovered from the site. That night, Delaney sat alone in her office, opened a copy of the note, the desk lamp shining on the words, "Father panicked." "We hit her." She thought of Harold Jr.'s aged face and the father in the old photos, a generation gone, yet their traces still etched on every page, every glass vial. After 48 years, a story thought closed had begun speaking again in the very words they wrote from the past. Once the diary entry of Harold Warren Jr. was confirmed to date from 1959, the cold case unit realized they stood before their only chance to verify what Frank Ivelo had suspected for nearly half a century: the new cement patch in the basement of the old clinic. Inspector Marie Delaney immediately filed a formal request with the Dutchess County Court for a warrant to excavate the basement floor at 214 Main Street, Rhinebeck, the former site of Dr. Charles Warren's clinic. In the petition, she stated, "New physical evidence, including the buried metal box, images of the victim in the storage room, and the diary statement, 'We hid her' by Harold Warren Jr., form a consistent chain indicating possible concealed human remains beneath the floor." The warrant was approved on June 4, 2007, 48 years to the day after the disappearance. On the morning of June 6, the site was sealed off. Shops along Main Street temporarily closed. The current owner, a real estate company, agreed to cooperate. Inside, the basement cement patch Ivelo once described as new and different in color, had darkened with age, but remained clearly distinguishable from the older sections. Ivelo, though over 80, was invited by Delaney to attend as honorary consultant. He stood quietly in a corner, watching fluorescent lights reflect off the floor he had once suspected but could never touch. "It's still there," he whispered. The state forensic team brought ground-penetrating radar, GPR, to scan for anomalies beneath the concrete. Images on the screen revealed an oval void at approximately 40 centimeters depth, with chaotic internal signal reflection, indicative of material differing from natural soil. After 2 hours of drilling and cutting, the smell of dampness and cement dust filled the room. When the slab was removed, dark clay soil appeared. Technicians used small trowels to scrape away layers, and near noon a trowel struck something hard. A small ivory-colored bone emerged, lying horizontally against the west wall. Digging wider, they uncovered clear human skeletal structure, part of the skull, arm bones, and a femur section still articulated. Beside it, lay a thin silver ring engraved EM and a yellowed piece of white fabric with green border stitching. 1950s nurse uniform style. Upon confirmation of the discovery, the area was placed under maximum security lockdown. State Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Peter Lang arrived on site to direct collection. He knelt to examine the teeth, cranial sutures, and surrounding soil. "This is an intentional burial," he said, "not an accident." The body was placed deliberately, then covered with cement. Each bone was numbered, photographed, and transferred to sealed containers. The silver ring was separated, the fabric piece placed in a moisture-proof bag. The team worked in silence, broken only by camera shutters and pen scratches. Iavello watched, hands trembling slightly. He whispered, "She's finally been found." The bones were transported to the Albany Forensic Lab. Initial analysis confirmed female remains, age 20-30, height 5'4", perfectly matching Evelyn Moore's description. No fractures or blunt force trauma, cervical vertebrae, and skull intact, ruling out direct assault. However, during marrow chemical analysis, the lab detected abnormally high levels of sodium thiopental, the same powerful anesthetic class found in the metal box syringes, along with traces of ketamine, lower but sufficient to cause respiratory depression. The compiled report stated, "Cause of death, acute respiratory failure due to pentothal overdose, likely combined with ketamine, consistent with intravenous administration." The silver EM ring was cleaned and examined, hand-engraved, confirmed by Harrison Jewelers in Rhinebeck, as sold to Mrs. Moore in 1957 for her daughter's birthday. The cleaned uniform fragment faintly showed Rhinebeck Dental Clinic, Warren's practice name. All items were catalogued and coded, Exhibit #2127, human remains and associated personal items recovered June 6, 2007. On June 14, full DNA results were released. Marrow samples from the remains were compared to Evelyn's niece's prior hair sample reference. Match probability, 99.99%. The report stated, victim positively identified as Evelyn Moore, female, missing September 1959. When the conclusion was read to the team, the room fell silent for several seconds, then Delaney nodded slightly. After nearly half a century, she finally has her name back in the forensic record, she said. That same day, the cold case unit held a closed press conference in Albany. The spokesperson announced, remains recovered from the basement of Dr. Charles Warren's former clinic have been positively identified as those of Nurse Evelyn Moore, missing since 1959. Cause of death, pentothal overdose. Investigation continues to determine direct responsibility. News spread rapidly through Rhinebeck. Local papers ran headlines. 1959 cold case, missing nurse found beneath clinic. Townspeople, many who had never heard Evelyn's name, came to view the sealed site and left flowers along the iron fence. That night, in the cold case unit office, Iavello sat alone, staring at an old photo of Evelyn beside the yellowed case file. He took a pen and wrote on the final page of his oldest notebook, June 6, 2007, remains located beneath storage room floor. Pentothal. She never left. I knew it. He set the pen down, eyes distant. Outside, light Hudson rain fell. In the quiet room, the scent of cement, damp earth, and 48 years of memory blended, closing the first chapter of a truth Rhinebeck had awaited for nearly half a century. 3 days after the DNA results were released, an arrest warrant for Harold Warren Jr. was signed by the Dutchess County Court on the morning of June 17, 2007. Charges listed: aiding concealment of a corpse, destruction of evidence, and obstruction of a criminal investigation. Harold was at home in his old Onondaga wooden house. When police knocked, he stepped out slowly, hands in pockets, unsurprised. I knew this was coming, he said softly, then held out his wrists for cuffs. In the transport vehicle he asked only one question: where did you find her? When Delaney answered in the clinic basement, he closed his eyes and remained silent for the 2-hour ride to Dutchess County. At the Rhinebeck police station, the same place the original 1959 missing person report was filed, Evelyn Moore's case was reclassified, cold case resolved. In the small briefing room, walls displayed copies of 2007 excavation photos and the victim's black and white portrait. Inspector Delaney read the summary. On September 14, 1959, Evelyn Moore died of pentothal overdose in Dr. Charles Warren's clinic. Body concealed in basement. Son Harold Warren Jr. assisted in pouring cement to hide it. Metal box containing syringes, film and EM. 9/14 note discovered February 2007, leading to reinvestigation and victim identification. The report closed with bold text, case resolved, after 48 years. Meanwhile, in the interview room, Harold Jr. sat across from Delaney. He had been assigned a public defender, but agreed to speak. She showed him photos of the remains, the silver ring, and the nurse uniform scrap. Harold stared for a long time, then said, "I thought the cement would keep the secret forever." His voice was hoarse, trembling slightly. Delaney kept her tone even. "What was your father panicked about, Mr. Harold?" he answered. "Because she died too fast. He only wanted to help her headache, injected the drug he was testing. When she collapsed, he called me. I just did what my father said." "And you hid her in the basement?" Harold nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. "He told me no one could ever know. I kept that promise my whole life, until you dug it up." Harold's statement was recorded and cross-referenced with forensic findings, matching the entire timeline. Death in the storage room. Late evening of September 14th, two people present, Charles Warren and Harold Jr., body buried that same night, beneath fresh concrete. Prosecutors immediately forwarded the file to state level for charge confirmation. Since Charles Warren died in 1988, criminal liability applied only to the living. Harold was charged with two primary counts: aiding concealment of a human corpse and obstruction of justice through destruction of evidence. Maximum sentence, under 2007 New York law, 25 years. That afternoon, Dutchess County Police held a press conference. Before a bank of local news microphones, the spokesperson stood beside a board reading Case Hash 59H216, resolved after 48 years. He declared, "Today we officially confirm the 1959 disappearance of Nurse Evelyn Moore in Rhinebeck has been solved. Excavation and DNA testing determined the victim died of anesthetic overdose. Harold Warren Jr., age 70, son of Dr. Charles Warren, has been arrested for concealment of a corpse and obstruction of justice." Behind him, photos of the excavation, the EM ring, and the metal box were displayed in glass frames. The story spread across New York State, front page in the Poughkeepsie Journal, under the headline, 1959 Case Closed, Hudson River Clinic, Mystery Solved. Rhinebeck residents gathered around the old site. They brought flowers and candles to the temporary fence, where months earlier, only construction had stood. An elderly woman told a reporter, "I heard my mother speak of that missing girl. Our town owed her for nearly half a century." In a separate briefing, Delaney said briefly, "There is no victory here, only justice delayed." In lockup, Harold sat quietly. He requested permission to send a letter to the Moore family. When the envelope reached Evelyn's sole surviving niece, it contained only 2 lines. "I do not ask forgiveness. I only want you to know she was never left alone. I was there, and I never forgot." The letter was entered into evidence as indirect confession. On the evening of June 20th, after every outlet had run the story, Frank Ivello received a call from Delaney. "Mr. Frank," she said, "we wanted you to know file 59H216 is officially marked solved." On the other end, Ivello was silent for several seconds. He sat in his old room where dusty case folders remained untouched. "I waited nearly half a century to hear that," he said softly. "Evelyn finally gets to come home with her name." The next morning, Dutchess County Police released the final statement, Case 59H216, Evelyn Moore's missing 1959, resolved. June 2007. Cause of death, pentothal poisoning. Responsible party deceased. Accessory, Harold Warren Jr., charged. The notice was sealed into state archives, closing a 48-year disappearance, one of the longest resolved cold cases in New York history. In Rhinebeck, the old clinic building was draped in white tarps, scheduled for demolition, to make way for a small memorial park. As the police car carrying Harold passed down Main Street, residents lined the sidewalks. No cheers, no jeers. Only silence. A few bowed their heads. Iavello, from a distance, leaned against the fence and quietly removed his hat. He watched the convoy disappear around the bend, where the Hudson glittered in summer light. Inside him, a strange calm settled, not joy, but the final feeling of a story closed, justice late, but arrived. After the case was officially announced, supplemental forensic examination continued for nearly 3 months to complete the prosecution file. The New York State Forensic Lab reanalyzed bone, hair, and residual chemicals in the 2 glass syringes from the metal box. Detailed results showed sodium pentothal levels in Evelyn Moore's blood and marrow 6 times the safe medical dose, enough to cause death within minutes if injected directly. Residual chemistry also confirmed the drug was mixed with experimental ketamine, not yet licensed in 1959. In the 70-plus page consolidated report, Chief Medical Examiner Peter Lang concluded, cause of death unequivocally acute respiratory failure due to intravenous overdose of pentothal, ketamine mixture. No evidence victim self-administered. Needle mark and injection site indicate operator with professional expertise. This report ended any remaining debate over cause of death. During document review, investigators uncovered an old administrative file in the Albany Medical College archives titled Sedation Project, 1959. It was a Hudson Valley Physician Group research initiative listing Dr. Charles Warren as clinical collaborator. The file described trials of new combined anesthetic methods, specifically naming sodium pentothal and pre-commercial ketamine supplied by a New Jersey pharmaceutical firm. Project goal: enhanced sedation for short procedures. An appendix noted test subjects, volunteer technicians, and dental clinic staff. A faint but legible EM appeared on the list. This confirmed Evelyn Moore had participated, or at least been used, as a test subject under Warren's supervision. When the file was made public, the Dutchess County DA concluded the sedation project was a cover for unauthorized human experimentation. Harold Warren Jr., acting as assistant, knew of the research and was present during the session that killed Evelyn. After the accident, father and son concealed the body in the basement and staged a disappearance. Based on the indirect confession and diary entry, father panicked. "We hid her." Prosecutors charged Harold Jr. with aiding corpse concealment, evidence destruction, and knowingly providing false statements in the 1959 record. In February 2008, the Dutchess County Criminal Court opened a public trial. The courtroom was packed with reporters and Rhinebeck residents, many who had only learned of the case from the previous year's news. In the front row, Frank Iavello was seated in honor. He carried the old photo of Evelyn, protected in plastic. On the defendant's bench, Harold Jr. sat silently, face gaunt, hair snow white. His defense attorney, Martin Levine, argued his client acted in emergency circumstances, witnessing his father's medical accident without criminal intent. He said, "My client did not cause the death. He only helped a panicked father hide a mistake. That was the act of a frightened son, not a criminal." The prosecution countered with a chain of forensic evidence and archival documents. Prosecutor Rachel Stein presented to the jury the Kodak film images, diary photocopies, and the EM 9/14 note. She pointed to the projection screen. "This is the final moment of Evelyn Moore. She was not a volunteer. She was the victim of an illegal experiment. After she died, 2 educated licensed men chose to bury the truth beneath cement. And they let this entire town live a lie for 48 years. Her voice rang steady, not loud, but every word struck like a hammer. When permitted to speak, Harold said slowly, "I didn't kill her. I only wanted to save my father. He lost his mind. I believed burying it was the only way he wouldn't go to prison. I was wrong, but I wasn't evil." The courtroom fell dead silent. In the public gallery, Evelyn's niece wiped tears, while Ivello only looked down, clutching his hat tightly. After 8 days of trial and 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on both counts, concealment of a human corpse and obstruction of justice. More serious charges, including manslaughter, were dismissed because the person who directly caused the death was deceased. As the foreman read the verdict, Harold stood motionless, eyes closed. Judge Robert Keener said, "The court acknowledges you did not cause the death, but you chose silence, buried a life, and let justice be forgotten for nearly half a century. Silence cannot be considered loyalty." He sentenced Harold Warren Jr. to 10 years imprisonment at Dutchess County Jail, plus 5 years probation upon release. The trial ended in heavy silence. As officers led Harold through the corridor, he turned back once toward the crowd, lips moving without sound. Outside, spring rain fell lightly on Main Street, where residents once gathered when the case was unearthed. Delaney stepped out and told reporters, "We don't call this a victory. We call it the end of silence." In the final report, sent to the New York governor's office, the cold case unit wrote, "The Evelyn Moore case demonstrates the importance of preservation and re-examination of evidence. Investigation results confirm the 1959 death resulted from an unauthorized medical experiment concealed for 48 years. Harold Warren Jr., sentenced to 10 years for corpse concealment and obstruction of justice. File 59-216, marked closed. Conviction. In April 2008, when the sentence took effect, Frank Avello was invited to Cold Case Unit headquarters to witness the official closing of the file. He placed his hand on the thick folder where the old line "Missing Person, Suspicious Circumstances" was now stamped in red "Closed." On the drive home, he stopped beside the Hudson River, where the water reflected the late afternoon light. In that moment, he understood that although justice came late, it had finally found the person forgotten for nearly half a century, Evelyn Moore. Once Harold Warren Jr.'s sentence became final, the Cold Case Unit performed the last step, compiling and archiving the complete Evelyn Moore case file, number 59-216. The finished dossier contained over 1,200 pages, including transcripts, crime scene photos, forensic reports, witness statements, and all new forensic documents. The investigation became a model of how justice changed across 2 eras, between a 1959 America still full of prejudice and limited legal systems, and 2007, when science was strong enough to speak for what people once overlooked. In the final summary, Inspector Marie Delaney wrote clearly, "In 1959, the investigation failed not only due to lack of technology, but also because of the weight of social bias. Doctors were seen as an untouchable class, while young women like Evelyn Moore, even when missing, were suspected of leaving voluntarily. That bias caused early signs, broken syringe, torn drug log page, fresh cement, to be pushed aside." Delaney devoted a separate section to recognizing lead investigator Frank Avello's effort, who had kept the note, "Possibility of connection to medical practice not ruled out." That very line, nearly half a century later, became the anchor for reopening the case. The report also analyzed the modern investigative process, from the accidental discovery of the metal box by a construction worker, to the use of molecular DNA matching, mass spectrometry chemical analysis, and GPR ground scanning to locate the buried remains. Each technological advance compensated for 1959 limitations when examination stopped at the naked eye and typewriter. The scientific summary listed 17 tests applied during reinvestigation, most notably DNA matching between the syringe hair and the Moore lineage, bone isotopic chemistry to confirm time of death, and digital fingerprint identification matching Harold Warren Jr. on the Kodak film. Tools that were mere theory in the late 1950s had become irrefutable evidence. The report stated, "Forensic technology did not merely prove guilt, it restored a voice to someone silenced for nearly half a century." The cold case unit also offered a sociological assessment. The case reflected post-war America's power gap, when professionals were exempt from suspicion and working women were undervalued in investigations. Had medical oversight standards, evidence preservation protocols, or civil rights been strictly enforced, Evelyn Moore's death might never have been buried. The report concluded, "Justice does not disappear, it is only delayed by the limits of its era." Scientific progress, combined with the will of those who keep the records, accomplished what the previous generation could not. On May 15, 2008, Case 59H216 was stamped in red "Solved" closed. Copies were sent to the State Archives in Albany and the New York Forensic Museum for display in the Cold Cases Resolved section. On the final page, Delaney wrote a short but precise closing, 1959, Failure of Human Investigation. 2007, Triumph of Scientific Investigation. Forensic progress can restore justice even after half a century. That afternoon, Frank Avello, invited to the file closing ceremony, stood before a plaque bearing Evelyn Moore's name and the words, "Found, 2007. He was silent for a long time, then said quietly to Delaney, "Technology can find the truth, but people have to want to see it." Delaney nodded, and together they signed the final copy of the file. As late sunlight streamed through the window onto the word "closed," the folder cover reflected the pale gold of a Hudson afternoon, ending a story that had lasted nearly half a century, a case once forgotten, now proof that justice, however late, can still be restored through knowledge and the persistence of those who never forget. The story of the Evelyn Moore case is not only a personal tragedy that lasted nearly half a century, it also reflects foundational values that American society today continues to preserve and fight to perfect: transparency, professional accountability, and faith in justice. In 1959, Evelyn, a young nurse, disappeared in silence because of the power of prejudice. Doctors were seen as incapable of error, while the voice of a working woman was dismissed. Police then lacked technology, but more importantly, they lacked the courage to question authority. It took until 2007, thanks to advances in forensics, DNA technology, and the steadfast spirit of investigators like Frank Avello and Marie Delaney, for the truth to be revealed. That story poses a profound question for American society today: how many truths are still hidden by prejudice, power, or collective silence? In modern life, where medicine, technology, and media hold ever greater influence, the lesson from Evelyn Moore's case is especially meaningful. It reminds us that professional ethics and transparency cannot be replaced by reputation or power. A concealed mistake can become a crime, and silence, like Harold Jr.'s, is complicity. Meanwhile, the persistence of those who keep records, those who believe in the value of truth, shows the power of civic responsibility, the foundation that keeps America constantly self-correcting and progressing. The lesson is not only for investigators or doctors, but for everyone. Justice truly exists only when each person dares to face the truth, however late, and refuses to let silence become part of the crime. If you believe justice can arrive even when it is late, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring cases forgotten by time. Thank you for following Evelyn Moore's journey. See you in the next episode, where the truth always finds a way to be discovered.